You know, for centuries, we've all looked up at the sky and dreamed of flying. But one man, Leonardo da Vinci, well, he didn't just dream. He actually drew up the blueprint. And for him, this wasn't just a passing fancy, it was a lifelong obsession.
And when I say obsession, that's almost an understatement. I mean, Leonardo poured his life into this. We're talking more than 500 sketches. And get this, over 35,000 words filling his notebooks, all laser-focused on one single goal: taking to the skies. And let's be clear, this wasn't just him doodling random ideas, no way. What we're really looking at here is a full-blown, systematic scientific quest. This was one of the greatest minds in history trying to literally conquer the skies.
So where do you even start with a dream that big? Well, for Leonardo, it wasn't about grabbing wood and canvas right away. It all started with a totally revolutionary way of thinking. See, while pretty much everyone else was looking at birds and seeing something almost magical, Leonardo saw science. He was absolutely convinced that flight wasn't some mysterious art you just had to imitate. No, he saw it as a set of physical laws, laws that could be decoded, engineered, and finally mastered.
And to crack that code, he did what he did best. He became the ultimate student of the natural world, turning his pure fascination into some seriously rigorous scientific inquiry.
Okay, this right here, this perfectly captures his whole method. On one side, you see these raw anatomical studies. He was actually dissecting birds and bats to get a handle on the incredible machinery of their bones and muscles. And then, look at the other side. You can see how that observation gets translated almost one-to-one into an engineering concept. It's this perfect feedback loop: science informing design, design inspiring more questions.
I mean, this just shows you the incredible scope of his research. He wasn't just some guy sketching cool-looking machines. He was a biologist studying anatomy, a physicist diving into air currents, and an engineer obsessed with weight and balance. He was literally attacking the problem of flight from every single angle you can imagine. So, armed with all this incredible knowledge from nature, Leonardo finally started designing the machines themselves. Now, were they flawed? Oh, absolutely. But you have to see them as these brilliant thought experiments, ideas that were literally centuries ahead of their time.
All right, let's kick things off with his most famous design, the Ornithopter. This machine was his big attempt to directly copy the flapping flight of the very birds and bats he had spent so much time studying. The mechanics behind it were pretty ingenious, actually. The pilot would lie face down and use their entire body, legs, and arms to power this whole system of rods and pulleys, and that would make these huge wings flap up and down. But there was a fundamental flaw, a pretty big one. A human being just doesn't have the muscle power to get it off the ground.
And just before we get to his next big idea, please remember to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell, share and like our videos. The information in the video is compiled from open sources. Thank you. Okay, so after realizing the huge limitations of flapping wings, Leonardo explored a totally different concept. This is his aerial screw. It's a machine that wasn't designed to flap at all, but to literally bite into the air, using this helical screw shape to create lift. You know, this was a totally revolutionary idea. It's basically the granddaddy of the modern helicopter. The plan was for 4 men to stand on a platform and turn these cranks, spinning this massive linen screw fast enough to compress the air underneath and lift the whole thing up. But just like the Ornithopter, it turned out to be a glorious failure. It was just too heavy for human power. But here's the thing. If we only focus on the machines, we're kind of missing the point. The real genius wasn't just in what he designed. It was in the scientific principles he figured out along the way.
And this is where we find it, his true genius. It wasn't in the wood and fabric of his models, but in ink on parchment. This tiny 18-page notebook, the Codex on the Flight of Birds. This is where Leonardo basically becomes the father of aeronautical science.
Inside this little book, he lays out concepts that are now totally fundamental to modern aviation. Just think about this for a second. He figured out that air acts like a fluid. He understood that a curved wing surface is directly related to lift. He even worked out the relationship between an object's center of gravity and its center of pressure, which is, the secret to keeping a plane stable in the air. These weren't just wild guesses. These were scientific principles he discovered centuries before anyone else.
So, for something like 500 years, Leonardo's flying machines were mostly seen as just that, beautiful but ultimately failed dreams. But this is where the story takes a really fascinating modern twist.
What if they weren't failures at all? What if they were just blueprints for a future he couldn't have possibly imagined?
Well, that's exactly what a research team at Johns Hopkins University started thinking. They decided to look back at Leonardo's so-called failed aerial screw to try and solve a very modern and very annoying problem, that loud buzzing sound drones make.
Okay, so this breaks down the problem really well. That annoying buzz from a normal drone, it comes from these tiny little air tornadoes. They're called tip vortices that spin off the ends of the propeller blades. But Leonardo's 500-year-old screw design, it manages the airflow in a completely different way. It actually spreads those vortices out, which has the amazing effect of muting the sound. And the results from their computer models were just stunning. It turns out that Leonardo's design, when you reimagine it for a modern drone, produces way less noise for the exact same amount of lift. The 500-year-old blueprint? It actually worked.
I mean, that just completely reframes his entire legacy, doesn't it? His designs weren't failures at all. They were just concepts so incredibly advanced that technology needed 500 years to finally catch up. And that leaves us with a pretty fascinating question, right? What other revolutionary ideas are just lying there, dormant in the pages of history, just waiting for us to rediscover them?